Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching this little mini lecture where we're going to look at some interesting topics today. And the coverage or the title of our topic today is Fake You Very Much, Deepfakes, Identity Theft, and Biopolitical Security. But I want to start you out with a recent interview that was done with Sam Altman, the CEO and founder of OpenAI. He said recently, using voice print authentication for important transactions is risky because AI or artificial intelligence can convincingly mimic human voices bypassing these security protocols. AI-generated voices and soon video deepfakes are becoming indistinguishable from reality, making it essential for financial institutions to quickly adopt stronger authentication models. And essentially, he then went on to talk about the only one that really isn't penetrable at this current point easily by OpenAI for now is passwords. So he's not talking about distance sci-fi scenarios. He means now. Facial recognition, voice authentication, ID scans are breakable. AI can imitate your voice, face, typing rhythm, and even your mannerisms per se. So the question we're asking today isn't, is this person real? It's, is quote unquote real still a thing the internet can recognize? Right? So what is real? And these new ideas of false security in this panopticon. So let's jump off at that question of how are we going to look at the future of security as well as kind of this world that we're within, right? So first, let's define the field. Deepfakes are an AI-generated or AI-altered images, audio or video that imitate real people. They're not just a fun celebrity meme per se, right? They are even more. They are politicians giving fake speeches. They are AI-generated job interviews that have existed, and they are even the inclusion of modern AI, of these AI virtual girlfriends or influencers who never existed. Think back to my past lecture where I talked to you all about the rise of these AI K-pop groups that outsold the legends like Blackpink and others. It's crazy. So this world is coming. And these tools are increasingly easy to use, meaning they're no longer elite hacker tools. They are democratized, right? And these tools are increasingly, again, as I mentioned, that easiness to use. What else? What was once the domain of the elite programmers or state-level cyber operators is now available in the consumer-grade apps, free browser plugins, and AI image generators that require no coding knowledge at all. Deepfakes is Deepfake software is drag and drop identically. Basically, voice cloning takes a single minute of recording speech or recorded speech, and face swapping happens in real time during live streams. Think about how many people change their face out all the time, right? This is what we mean when we say that technological power has been democratized. But let's not mistake access for equity or equality. What anyone can produce, synthetic media, it's possible. It doesn't mean everyone has equal protection from the consequences of said structure. Marginalized groups, especially women, trans folk, and people of color, are disproportionately targeted by weaponized deepfakes. So while the tools are more accessible than ever, the harms are still unequally distributed. And I want to take a moment to reference something that's happening here in 2025, or whenever we'll watch this later, right, is the T app, a place where women were going to share experiences with former boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, ex-lovers, and be able to give each other the quote-unquote tea. This was a site made by women to protect women, for whatever purpose or however you look at it. But within a short period of time, it was massively hacked. And all of the identities, because this website was actually vibe coded and it wasn't very authenticated where its security was. And all of the females and women presenting or women identifying who had posted on this apps, there are 75,000 plus, had all of their identity leaked, their location, their driver's license, and more. So when we look at who's being impacted by this, the men, yes, had tea spilled on their bad behaviors per se. Maybe some are being not as honest as the website claims, but all these women's identities weren't just compromised, they were put out there. And I want you to think further sociologically. What happens to the potentially abusive partner former partner who decides to take action after words being said? It's scary. And this is where we can also look at how we can see deepfakes through the social construction of technology, or SCOT, that we've talked about. SCOT reminds us that technologies never emerge in a vacuum. They are developed, adopted, and stabilized through a social processes. Deepfakes are no exception to this. They weren't inevitable. They were construction through a series of collective decisions that reflect our cultural and political priorities. Initially created by tech hobbyists and open source coders exploring machine learning, deepfakes were first shaped by this mix of curiosity, experimentation, in some cases, unethical intentions. But it wasn't until meme culture embraced them via face swap apps, celebrity parodies, and viral TikToks that deepfakes were more normalized, per se. This wasn't just a technological evolution, it was a cultural decision to treat synthetic media as playful and entertaining rather than alarming and alertist, right? As technology matured, it was further refined and weaponized by political operatives, online harassers, influencers, and state actors who saw it as potential for manipulation, deception, and amplification. The Scott lens helps us see that we prioritized realism, flexibility, and virtuality, not accuracy or trust. We built these tools because we had to, right? But because we had built these tools not because we had to, my apologies, but because we valued fidelity and speculation or spectacle over verification and authenticity. The deepfake we have today is a product of that social shaping, not just some technological destiny per se. So from there, let's kind of talk about this world that we're within, right? So when we see this, this is what we're talking about, the social construction of technology and deepfakes. Feel free to go back and look over this slide. But now we're going to go into a little bit more detail, the network of fakeness per se, right? So actor network theory, one of the main lenses we've used in this class, asks us to abandon the idea that technology is just a tool society uses. It reframes technology as an active participant in shaping social life. When we look at the deepfakes through this lens, they aren't simply files created by bad actors or tech bros, right? They're the outcome of sprawling networks, human actors like coders, men makers, right? Influencers and political campaigners and non-human actors like neutral nets, training data sets, watermarks and systems, and TikTok recommendation engines. Actor network theory treats these all as equal contributors to the phenomenons. A viral deepfake of Joe Biden giving a speech he never gave isn't just about the person who made it, it's about the sound filter, the platform engagement algorithm, and the network of users who have amplified it further, right? This networked perspective raises a distinctly sociological question, and that is, if no single actor is in control, who is then accountable? Is the coder who generated the clip, the platform that surfaced it, or the viewers who didn't check its legitimacy before sharing? Who's responsible? The actor network theory doesn't offer easy moral assignments. It complicates blame and focus to see agency as distributed, right? This matters politically, right? Think of how deepfake fueled over confusion in Nigeria's 2023 election, or how fake AI-generated interviews with Elon Musk were used to scam crypto investors. These aren't isolated failures. They are systems of behaving exactly as designed. The actor network view helps us map the connections between users, tools, and algorithms and infrastructures, and pushes us to see responsibility for the technological harm isn't singular, it's structural. And that's where we start seeing further understandings of how we see this source of power or blame, right? And then we can start adding in some of the Foucauldian lenses of disciplinary power as well as biopower that we've been learning about in this class. Michel Foucault's concept of biopower shifts our understanding of control from overt punishment to the subtle, ongoing management of life itself. The age of deepfakes and AI impersonations, right, we're no longer just regulated what people do. We're managing what counts as quote unquote real. Identity is no longer a stable fact. It's performance that we must constantly be verifying. Platforms deciding who gets a blue check, who gets whose content gets quote unquote flagged, and whose likeness is protected by terms of service. Consider how Instagram or TikTok requires biometric scans for account recovery, or job candidates now face AI screening tools that verifies what is authenticity via a webcam presence. This surveillance dressed up as access, right? Biopower is visible in who gets left out. Those without digital credentials, people who are undocumented, unverified, deplatformed, or simply under-resourced are often treated as invisible and many times seen as inauthentic. They become ghosts in the machine, unable to prove themselves within the systems that demand our constant digital legibility. Sam Altman's statement that passwords are the last things standing underscores this shift. Security is no longer about protection from the outside threats. It's about meeting a threshold of platformed approved realness and how we see it. In that world, trust isn't something that you eat, you earn socially. It's something that you perform technologically. Biopower doesn't just shape bodies anymore. It shapes data, it shapes identity, and it shapes the very terms of existence in the online world that surrounds us. And this is where we can look at Langdon Weiner again in this class, right? Weiner's famous question, do artifacts have politics, pushes us to recognize that technology is never neutral, as we've discussed. Deepfakes answer his question loudly. Yes, they do. These synthetic media tools challenge the political order of identity itself. If anyone can impersonate a senator with high fidelity, democracy is destabilized, not through votes, but through perception. If a deceased celebrity can be digitally revived and made to endorse products, the boundary between life and death becomes commercially negotiable. And if convincing deepfakes can cost someone their job, ruin a court case, or just damage their social credibility, then the power to create or destroy identity now sits in the hands of whoever controls these tools. If you don't know, there's conversations on how representation or how we can use AI inside court cases. It's already been done, as well as even further about this idea of think about Tupac when he was put onto the Coachella stage. That's still capitalism, as cool as it was. How long until we maybe have Karl Marx endorse capitalism in a Diet Coke? It could be, right? Langdon Weiner helps us see that this isn't just the fault of bad actors, it's the result of specific design decision. Who the tools are built for, what protections are missing, and which social consequences are ignored. The lack of deepfake regulation in many countries isn't just a legislative oversight, it's a political stance shaped by voices of which who then gets looked at who's being prioritized in ideas in places of power like Silicon Valley, and which groups are more vulnerable to said abuse, like facial recognition systems that misidentify black faces at higher rates. Deepfake technologies reflect structural inequalities baked into their design and deployment. Weiner reminds us when we talk about technology, we're also talking about power, governance, and whose version of reality gets to win. And this is where we can look a little bit further again into the sociological lenses that we're learning about, right? So let's zoom out and think sociologically for a second. At the core of this deepfake ecosystem are a set of growing tensions, conflicts between what we value as a society and what our technological systems actually reward. So first, there's trust v. speculation. In the media, environment saturated with deepfakes, misinformation, and AI generated content, it's more often outrageous, visually polished, or emotionally charged media that gets viral, right? Not the most accurate. Second, we face privacy versus performance. Users are constantly asked to give more of themselves, facial data, voice patterns, typing rhythm, under the guise of safety or verification, yet those same inputs are fed into the training sets that make imitation then easier. So what starts as a protective gesture becomes a fuel for replication, right? Then it comes to perhaps the most troubling one on this list, which is truth versus legibility. Platforms don't evaluate what's true. They evaluate what fits the system, what the algorithm can recognize, process, and even match with past pattern recognition. This makes truth feel secondary to plausibility, and the arbiter of plausibility, not you, right? Not your community, the algorithm. A viral deepfake isn't real in the traditional sense, but it's real enough to trigger political action, outrage, or profit, and a kernel of truth to be able to push a narrative. So when sociologists ask who controls the knowledge in the digital age, the answer is increasingly lies in the lines of code. In the systems, your ability to be believed depends on less on truth and more on your alignment with algorithmic expectations. And this leads us kind of into a yellow dig prompt for you all if you want to use this to be able to inspire yourself. So let's end this little mini lecture with this question. The question is that, look at the heart of the relationship of technology. What does authenticity mean when AI can mimic everything? Your vote, your face, your personality, even your affect. If tomorrow you had to verify your identity, not to a human, but to an algorithm, what would it use to decide that you're really you? Is it your password, your face scan, your typing cadence, your Spotify playlist? The things that once made you unique are now quantifiable inputs, and in some cases, replicable outputs. So we have to ask ourselves, are we moving towards a version of identity that only valid if a machine readable approval, right? Now, here's a twist. If AI trained, okay, here's a twist for you, right? If AI is trained on dominant data and platforms only verify certain types of people or behaviors, then truth itself starts to look like a privilege, accessibility or accessible to those who already have institutional legitimacy. If you're undocumented, unhoused, banned, or just too offline, you might not be able to prove your reality in a world governed by digital checkpoints. And that raises the final question. In the age of deepfakes and biometric verification, is being believable now something you have to earn? or is it something you can afford? And this leads me to my closing thought for you all today. So let's circle back to the Sam Altman unsettling claim. Passwords are the last thing standing. It's almost poetic and ironic. In a world shaped by generative AI, biometric scans, deep fakes, and performative algorithms, the one thing still protecting your digital identity is a string of characters you remembered from 2016. The password isn't sophisticated, but it's human scaled. It depends on memory, trust, and choice. And that's something as AI technologies become more advanced, more capable of faking us, predicting us, replacing us. It turns out to the most secure form of authenticity might be the least technical. Maybe that's the paradox here. The more we automate truth, the more we'll need non-human, non-automated ways of defending it. Algorithms can replicate your voice, but they can't replicate your relationships. Deepfakes can mimic your face, but they can't mimic your context. So as sociologists, the work ahead isn't just technical, it's human. Its platform can't tell what's real, then society must decide what counts as real and who gets to decide. Trust won't be saved by detection tools alone. It'll be protected by things like ethics, access, community, and sociological thinking. And something to kind of put through your mind to think about as we are moving forward in this course. What is this happening more than you know? One of the solutions of people in my positions of power in the professor world, right, inside the teaching world, is as we are running into limitations on detection tools to be able to, let's say, detect generative AI and these fakes that we're talking about, a solution is going back to blue books, going back to having you write in class, which then goes away from the protections of equality that have been established to help people who have learning differences or the dyslexia or fear and anxiety. So our solution to try to combat, to know that you're really doing your homework, is to take you back to when I was in college and in high school, when everything was written by hand, taking a Luddite approach rather than learning how to understand and ethically police this technological world we're in. So I ask you to think about that. I ask you to think about the world that's around us. And I look forward to our next lecture. Take care.